we've had a number of sessions varying from different seminar topics, and particularly last week we had our facilitator speaking on how to get grants, seamless way to get grants from funders. And I'm sure that as much as we've also tried to lay our hands on applications for research grants, there were so many things you said last week that was beneficial. So let's just jump out there with the faith and hope that we'll get it this time. And remember not to go solo. As you get the information, relate with others, share the experience, share the knowledge, and let others to have the grants given to them so we all can have research done benefiting our society. I also did mention last week that the annual conference will be coming up this year virtually. So I did mention that information will be rolled out to as many of us, and I've also seen people requesting for information on the WhatsApp platform. So please, if you are yet to get yourself enlisted, you can still reach out to us on the email address info@iai.org. Thank you so much. So tonight I'm sure we've all seen the flyer, and tonight we'll be having something similar to what we had a few weeks down the line. That particular one I'm referring to was the one that addressed mathematics. And as we know, in Nigeria and I think West Africa, there are two major subjects that everybody must pass, and that is English and mathematics. As important as it is, regardless of the subject you want to base on, regardless of the subject you want to focus on, those two subjects are non-negotiable, as in to pass at credit level for the SSC. And we've also discovered that a lot of people are finding it so difficult to pass these two subjects at a sitting. And that's why the other time we had a professor of mathematics addressing how to pass mathematics without niche. So as I did mention that time, we've had situations where examiners, students will write the exams and clear every other thing they need to clear except mathematics. And they keep writing and writing and writing. And it seems the more they write, the more math becomes a problem. And it's also very similar for English language. In fact, you find it that people who even speak fluently, I don't know if there's a research on that, but I've personally noticed that people who speak fluently find it so difficult to write fluently. And when they write essay, it's so difficult for you to even understand. You'll be so amazed. Is it the same person I heard speaking the other day that has written this? So it shows that it's not even in the fluency in speaking now that gives a credit in English. It's way beyond that. So that's why we want to address this as assessors, as examiners, how we can make impact on our students, considering that we are already at the time of examination for our students. I'm aware WAEC is starting on Monday for Nigeria. I don't know if that addresses other countries. And to also now think that the first subject this time is mathematics. So it's an essential thing we can't joke with. And that's why we'll be addressing that in today's study. So mathematics has been addressed, which is the first subject for maths for WAEC this time. And we want to focus on English this time around. And we'll be having someone facilitating that. We'll be having Dr. Adaje Ochigbo. He's a senior lecturer in English language. I'll be the one facilitating the seminar topic, Achieving Communicative Competence among learners of English in a second language context. I'm sure some of us in this category are second language learners. We have our mother tongue, which it has a very huge effect on how much we speak. I'm not sure we have overcome how much our mother tongue accent affects our ability to speak and communicate in English. So we have a lecturer of English, is a senior lecturer in English language, going to address the speaking ability, how we can communicate effective competence in speaking English language amidst second language speakers. So let me welcome Dr. Atat Ochigbo. Please welcome him, please. I'm aware the facilitator is having connectivity issue. So let's just be patient a bit for him as we expect him to join us shortly. Okay, while we wait for him, I just want to encourage those people just joining us to keep joining us. We still have a lot of insightful packages ahead of us. I'm sure it will join us very shortly. And also to reiterate some of the announcements I've made earlier concerning the forthcoming conference. This year's conference is going to hold virtually, as I mentioned earlier, and the fee has also been subsidized as regards that. So we have just $20. That's equivalent to 5,000 naira for people in Nigeria. The flyers has also been released. I'm sure a lot of us have seen the comprehensive flyer, both the comprehensive flyer and the short one. The conference is going to run from 16th to 20th of November. So, and the theme once again is redesigning educational assessments for the 21st century. So please let's plan ahead and let's prepare to attend the seminar. Just while we wait, I think we should do something a bit differently. Since we are talking about the second language speakers of English, and there is someone here with me who she's a second language speaker, and she has done something differently, and she want to address us with spoken words. So let's just listen.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Prevail. 2 years ago, we started this. So we were faced with a lot of challenges, but we kept on moving. We could not see the future ahead. We never stopped having foresight. So unworthy to become recognized, suddenly we were chosen to stand out. Yeah, our vision wasn't dim for the foresight. Now we bury all our struggles and we make you know we are excellent. We are excellent. We didn't have that motto for no just cause. Innovation for excellence. We pursued without relenting, and that's what we really call excellence. We won't stop pursuing until we see the innovation we all desire. Thank you very much.
All right, so that's the second language speaker, and I'm sure we all saw the way she did the rhyme in that. I hope by now our facilitator is with us, and let me confirm with. Um, he's still yet to join us. Perusing slides. Hey, we are so sorry, everyone. We've been able to get our facilitator on board. So help me welcome Dr. Adaji. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that well, and I'm sure I didn't. So help me welcome Dr. Adaji Ochibo.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to all participants. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you clearly.
Okay. Good evening, Dr. Rio and fellow participants. I fully acknowledge the presence of professors, educators, researchers, scholars, students, and fellow stakeholders. I am privileged to be invited to present a paper in this forum. The topic of the presentation tonight is achieving communicative competence among learners of English in a second language context. I've been motivated to choose this topic because of the prevailing linguistic situation in countries where English language is studied as a second language. It's used, learned, and we communicate in it as a second language. And what is the situation? In such a non-native English context, English language is studied for fairly a long period. And we still have a situation where students who have benefited from such teaching learning process are unable to communicate well in English language. And the objective, therefore, of the presentation this evening is to investigate the teaching learning process of the language for causes of the problem and also the solutions to the problem. The presentation has an outline. We have introduction as presented on the slide here, content, recommendation, and conclusion. We proceed from the general to the specific. We want to say that English is language is for communication. Language has an essence, and the essence is for communication. And for communication to be effective, aside other extra-linguistic factors, language form should match function and meaning in communication. And that is the reason why language study focuses on linguistic forms. Their functions and imports in communication. The knowledge of linguistic forms with the application in communication is what we call linguistic competence, while the ability to appropriately use the learned linguistic forms in communication is referred to as communicative competence. We therefore learn language to use it to communicate, where, as it obtains in most cases, one has learned about a language sufficiently and is unable to use it to communicate meaningfully and acceptably, at least to educated non-native speakers and even native speakers, then there's a problem. And we need to investigate the teaching learning process of the language for the causes and solution to the problem. The presentation tonight, as I've earlier stated, is to explore the likely factors that account for poor written and oral communication of learners of English in a second language context. I'll be using Nigerian situation as illustration in my presentation because I'm familiar with them. And I also assume that some of the cases we'll be mentioning are common to countries or communities where English is used as a second language. In the presentation, we'll look at the English language in global communication, the categories of English language users, the English language in a second contest, I mean second language contest, and then now look at what are the requirements for effective teaching of English language as a second in a second language contest. And then what are the problems that we encounter in teaching and learning English language as the second language. So we now look at the first content in the slide, English in global communication. English in global communication. English in global communication. Well, not what you have now, English in global communication. English is a world language. English is a world language. English is a world language, and 1 out of 4 persons in the world can be reached through English language. It is the principal language of books, newspapers, airports, air traffic control, science, technology, medicine, diplomacy, sport, and so many more. And of all the information in the world electronic retrieval system is stored in English language. And in addition, English is an official language of the United Nations, in addition to Arabic, Chinese, French, Russia, and Spanish. Though Chinese is spoken by a greater number of people, but English has a wider spread. There are 3 categories of English language users. We have the native speakers, who are more than 300 million. We have the second language users, who are also over 300 million, and then the foreign language users. In the slides are not actually. Let's just take a look at some of the countries that use it as a second language. We have, as a first language, as a native language. We have countries like North American, the British Isles, Australia, New Zealand, the Caribbean, and South Africa. And the second language users are found in India, Singapore, Malaysia, Nigeria, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, Ghana, Bangladesh, Botswana, Cameroon, Gambia, Malawi, Marshall Islands, Swaziland, Pakistan, Rwanda, and several others. As a foreign language users, foreign language users, as a foreign language, we have the users in Germany, Russia, China, France, Japan, Taiwan, and Thailand. They use it to facilitate contact between them and foreign countries. We need to have an understanding that the second language contest, they do not have a native language that is used acceptably in the nation. And so, since English language is a colonial heritage, they use that. And then we have, for the foreign language users, those who use as a foreign language, they have their own native language for national use. But because we want to have contact with other countries, they now use English language for such a contact. So we want to examine the English language in a second language contest. It plays a significant role in such countries. Since our discussion is on second language content, we are narrowing it down from native to second language, while leaving aside the native context, the foreign language context, and we're focusing on the second language context. In the countries I've just mentioned, English is an official language in some of those countries. It is used as a second language, like I've earlier said, in Nigeria, Sri Lanka, Liberia. And the reason is simply that in such countries, there's no one native language that is generally acceptable. It plays significant role in such countries. It plays the role, regulative role, communicative role, occupational role, creative role, and instrumental roles in every language context. If you come to Nigeria, for example, English regulates, just to mention a particular case, English regulates the government policies, administration, and Nigeria will use it for both interpersonal and national and international communications. In occupation is required. And when you come to the educational system, it is instrumental to formal learning, right from pre-primary to tertiary education level. English is used as a medium of instruction and also a compulsory subject. I hope I've not lost my audience. Hello? 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 Okay, thank you very much. We want to examine its instructional component. In such countries, of course, we have primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions. At the primary and secondary levels, English is studied as a general English. The language is studied as a general English. And this is different from studying it for specific or special purposes. At the university level or tertiary institution level, for example, in Nigeria, the colleges of education, polytechnics, and universities study as English for academic purposes. So at the lower level, it's studied as general English, and it has its own components. We look at grammar, you look at vocabulary, and the oral skills, writing, reading. These are some of the components that teaching at that level focuses on. But by the time you get to the university, what we are supposed to have is English for academic purposes. But sadly, what we do then might not necessarily is we are thinking more of general English. So I've gone to this level to show us its importance in English language importance in second language context, the role it plays, and because of that, it is studied, and we have seen the components of English language study in such a context. We'll look at the requirement for effective teaching and learning of English as a second language. Some of the requirements include, number one, adequate teachers of English. If we want our learners to be able to use the language acceptably, we need to have adequate teachers of English. In fact, because of the nature of the language and all other language also as well, that involves learning and doing a lot of practices so that they can perfect the use of the language in communication. We need to have at least a teacher attached to English, to a particular class, English teacher per class, so that they can sufficiently learn, receive instruction from the teachers, and also the learners will engage in practice, hoping at the end, the teacher's instruction plus their practice will enable them to have at least minimal basic competence in the use of the language. At such level of the primary and secondary school, we you have at least 6 lesson periods in a week so that the student can learn well. And this is the wisdom behind it, that a day will be given to an aspect, and then a particular day there will be double lesson period for for grammar, like have this, have disconnected. Hello, I hope you are with me.
I use my own.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Then we need to have installation of English language laboratory. Here you have students learning from a model speaker of the language. It may be an educated, non-native speaker, or a native speaker. You have sounds of the language recorded in a cassette and play back to the student, and the learners repeat the correct acceptable sounds, and so that they will now be able to pronounce the words in the language correctly. Because if you do not pronounce the words correctly, your interlocutor will not be able to get the desired meaning, and as a result, there will be no communication. Then we need to have provision of there should be provision of relevant English language teaching materials. English language teaching materials. The material should not just be limited to class tests for students, and then the teacher is limited to only that. I'm just talking about the level of the primary and the secondary. And by the time you get to the university, the English for academic purpose, which we teach at the higher institutions, there should be adequate material for the teachers to research and give the student what they need to be able to learn about the language and how to use it in various communicative contexts. We need resource materials on all aspects of English language teaching. We have the aspects we have mentioned earlier. We have grammar, we have phonology, which is oral skills. We have semantics, which they call at the lower level vocabulary development or lexis. And then, of course, we have the communication skills like writing and reading. When they learn this aspect, they should be able to use it in writing or reading. They should be able to read well with it and also use it in writing and even in speech. So there are various materials that will help teachers to develop these students in these various aspects of the English language. Those materials should be provided. And the students also should be sufficiently exposed to exposure of students to literary tests beyond maybe the junior secondary school level. The junior secondary school level is a terminal point, as well as SSC, OND, HND, and then the graduate level. But if you look at the situation in Nigeria, the students stop learning literature, storybooks, reading storybook at the level of the GSSE. And this shouldn't be, even though they are not learning to become graduates in English as a course of study. But literature materials are like what a lab is to a science student. The student gets to the lab to experiment whatever he has learned theoretically in the class. In the literary test, like storybook, drama test, that is where we see English really in demonstration. And so even if they are not going to use it as part, it's not part of their course, what they will sit for at the SSC or what they may be certificated in, but they need to read it to see how the language is used in communication. Then we need to have availability of authentic materials. Authentic materials are materials not designed to teach any language or even any course or any subject. But in the process of teaching, you discover that we need to rely on some of these materials, like newspapers, periodicals, magazines, and all that. We want to material on law and the rest, on politics, on National Assembly procedure and all that. This material may be useful in teaching them vocabulary associated with such fields. So those are the material we call authentic materials, and we need to have innovative teaching, English teaching skills. We are referring to teachers. They need to have innovative teaching skills. There are various teaching material, English language teaching methods, original language teaching methods. And the one a particular teacher using a particular situation depends on the situation he has met, the situation he meets. And so He has to be creative to know which one to use, which one will benefit the student, which one will communicate his thoughts, his lesson well to the student at whatever level, whether at the university level, even though they will lecture there, which method is appropriate to communicate knowledge to students about the language and how they will be able to use the language in communication. And also, at every learning point, we have students that come from different backgrounds. In other words, their level of proficiency in the language differ. And as a result of that, a creative English language teacher has to know what to do to carry everybody along. In fact, it's mandatory and it's possible to make every learner of English language write and speak standard English. And then this one, that's the duty of the teacher, is to know what approach you're able to use to carry everybody along. Then the another requirement is engagement of qualified teachers. We need to engage people who have actually read English language, no literature, no drama, no mass communication, no liberal arts, not communicative arts, not even law, not linguistics, but also have read English and at least have a background in the ability to teach English like NCE and maybe a PGD, or those who combine English language study with a methodology at the university level, at the NCE level. We need to engage qualified teachers. And finally, they should be exposed sufficiently to the facts about the language. We don't just teach them for purpose of exam, but at the end, the students should come out and be able to speak well. I want to repeat something, that we have terminal points in our educational system. For example, in Nigeria, the junior secondary school certificate is a terminal point. The wisdom of that educational system of 6334 is that it's possible to have somebody after junior secondary school is not capable to do abstract study of physics, chemistry, and the rest, and even the arts, but he can now withdraw and learn maybe plumbing and so on. He has ended his formal learning at that point, and he should be able to communicate acceptably in the English language. So sufficient exposure will help us to achieve that. And then as the SLC, at the OND, the HND, the NCE, and then the graduate level, the undergraduate level, as degree holders, these are terminal points. Whichever terminal point a learner wishes to end or for any reason end the formal learning, he should be able to communicate acceptably in the language. And that's what calls for some of these requirements and the fact of sufficient exposure. We look at some of the inhibitions to effective teaching and learning of English as a second language. I have divided these inhibitions to two: linguistic factors and non-linguistic factors. The first is the problem of employment of graduates of disciplines such as drama, that is theater arts, literature, French, linguistics, language arts, mass communication, communication arts, Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, etc., and maybe other subjects, even journalism, to teach English language. Actually, these people do not have sufficient knowledge of English language to be able to teach learners to the point of speaking acceptable or standard English. But in most of the cases, if you go to our primary school level, for example, in Nigeria that I'm familiar with, you find maybe about 2 teachers in a class. And they may have even read something other than English. And the 2 teachers or even 1 teacher teaches everything in the class. How is it possible for such a situation? In such a situation for a teacher to be able to particularly groom a child to speak well and write well in the language, when he has to teach up to 12 subjects alone. And if you go to the secondary school level, we have people teaching English language that are not English language scholars. They did not read English in the university. They were not trained in it. But they feel they can do it. Even sadly at the level of the university, where we have this use of English, which is technically called English for academic purposes, we will have people from mass communication, liberal arts, linguistics, even French, teaching English language. This is one of the problems we have. And such people cannot actually groom people to learn the language well. Yes, they can speak the language, but they are not trained in that area. And so they cannot help another person to know the language very well. Then we have this problem of a manageable large class. We know that in our secondary school, primary school, even the university, we discovered that English language classes are very large. For example, in the university, you can have a class, I mean a GST class, use of English class, normally called a GST, when you have about 900 students. I've ever taught close to 1,000 in the class. And English language teaching requires practice so that the student will be able to perfect the use of the language in communication. In such a situation, how is it possible to even give an exercise that has even just 5 sentences for them to do? That means 5 times about 900 or 1,000. So the person will be battling with about 5,000 sheets to obtain such sentences to handle. So at times, this kind of situation makes it very difficult for students to learn well. They will have the problem of limited English language lesson period, and then non-coverage, excess English language teaching workload. I've mentioned that, and because the class is large, if you get to the lower class, lower level of education in Nigeria, like primary school or secondary school, particularly secondary school, we have a teacher teaching maybe GSS1, GSS2, and each class has about 3 or 4 arms. Now, and this is a subject where almost every day, after each lesson, the student is supposed to do an exercise for the teacher to mark before the close of the school hour. So in this kind of situation, it becomes very difficult for him to be able to guide. He just be teaching just to keep his job, and then it may not be quite, it's not an effective, it doesn't allow for effective teaching and learning of the language. The non-coverage of English language learning scheme of work. We have it. We know that, for example, at the secondary school level, if you pick their text, class text, you will discover that they are not able to go far before they enter another class. And this is a very difficult situation. So the learning there becomes very poor. Learning there becomes very poor. They will not be able to make good progress. And excuse me, I'm having a mix up here. Let me. Yeah. It's okay. We also have, like I mentioned, the absence of English language lab. Number 7, there's this problem of weak English language teacher education program. You mean the program we have to train our English language teachers? We have it at the NC level and at the university level, particularly in Nigeria. A balanced program for training English language teachers should expose the teacher trainees to the core areas of English language, literature in English, and language education methodology. But what we have mostly where the students have to combine English and education methodology, there's more emphasis on methodology, and there's less emphasis on learning the core areas of English language. And here's somebody coming from a poor background of English language use, and he gets to the university, he's being taught majorly on how to teach the language. And I think we should strike a balance. If you should know the core of the English language and also the core of language education methodology, as well as literature in English. But at times, in most of these training departments, they don't learn more of the English language, such that even those who do the BA English, they come out knowing more of the English language than those who combine it with a teaching methodology. And we are not really trained the BA English language graduate for the classroom, even though they may end up getting there. And before they, for them to get there, they need to have education background, maybe a postgraduate diploma in education. But the ones that are trained directly for that and leave the system to go and teach that, they have a weak base in English language. And that actually doesn't help. This will eventually help our students. And so when you have that kind of weak something, is also problematic. And even beyond that, even the BA English program at the university level at times is weak. You see, they learn more of literature than English language. How many of these are university English language courses have such core areas like grammar, semantics, syntax, morphology, maybe pragmatics and all that? They may have one or two, and they give much attention to things like sociolinguistics, discourse analysis, pragmatics, and then all forms of literature. There's nothing wrong with learning literature, but it should not be at the expenses of the English language. Somebody is taking a degree in English language and is having a weak base in the language, so that when he gets to the classroom, even though he's able to later get a professional teaching qualification, he's still not able to teach the language because of poor exposure. There's this problem also of external assessment of English language learners. I have to feature this because the fact still remains that assessment, maybe by JAM, by NECO, NAFTEV, WAEC, of course, they are based on what we expect the student to learn. But at the end of what they expect, but do the student actually learn all? Should it be what they expect the student to learn? Of course, it should be, because we want to keep a standard. But the fact still remains, it's based on what they should learn. But here they are not up to. And at the end of the day, they leave the system weak in the language. And here is international organizations like World Bank assessing the quality of education based on the student proficiency in English language. I think we have to look into that kind of situation. And then we have the problem of lack of English language teaching material, resource books, authentic materials, and all that. Then the unavailability of modern technologies for language instruction, such as computer, vocabulary learning software, what we call computer assisted language learning, and then we have mobile assisted language and such other technologies. In most of our schools, these things are absent and they will not help. Now I go to the non-linguistic factors that is responsible for this situation of our learners not being able to use the language well after a long period of no less than 15 years in case of Nigeria of learning English language. By the time you count it from pre-primary to first year in the university or even a college of education or polytechnic, where they terminate formal learning of English language, you discover they would have spent about 15 years and yet they live unable to speak standard English. And so we want to look at some of the non-linguistic factors. Number one is no knowledge of dating programs. At least the teacher should be exposed to such situations like workshops and conferences, even short-time courses where new things in the language are exposed to them. Recently, I was reading a material some years ago, a particular phonetic representation of a sound in English language that I was exposed to in the university. I discovered and I read through the material, it had been changed. And such things they should know. If not, they'll still be using the old one. So there's this frequent updating of matters and even sentences, issues, facts about the language. And teachers should be exposed to them from time to time. But this thing is not there. This facility is not there. And then we're having regular monthly motivation. What I call motivation is the salary, which makes teachers to seek for other sources of income for sustenance. The work actually, the target is to bring children up in the use of the language. But when he's hungry, what does he do? How will he be able to handle it very well? These are some of the non-linguistic factors responsible for that weak base of learners in English language. We have no English language teachers incentive. I have ever worked in a place in the north, particularly in Kano, where those of us who taught English were given particular, they were given incentive, mathematics and English language, because of the nature of the language, of the two subjects. There's no how you teach mathematics, for example, any day and you not give the student exercise. The same thing with English language. So it's like the system that discovered that the subject teachers of these two subjects do more than other teachers. Yes, they expose students and also go ahead to assess them on daily basis. And for that reason, they give them incentive, and that will encourage them to want to continue in the work and not jump out. Then we have non-professional English language teachers. That's a problem. Those who are not professional, who have at least professional certificate like provide diploma in education, don't having how professionality in terms of being able to communicate the knowledge to students. That's why we need language education method. And so people who are in it, imagine somebody who has linguistics, BSc or BA in linguistics. He doesn't have educational background. In the first place, not even to be in the field of English language teaching, but he's there without educational background. Or somebody who has a BA in English language. He lacks the methodology of communicating the language to learners. It's okay, you'll be able to tell them about the language, but the methodology is important too, because the methodology will help you to come to the level where the student will be able to learn. We have the negative effects of house economy that induces children to work for tuition fee and then money to purchase learning materials. And this can actually distract them from learning. There's also poor learning environment. You get to some classroom, the primary school level, they are sitting on the floor. In the class, at the secondary school level, maybe there are too many on the desk. And then you get to the university where they study English for academic purposes. The hall is shielded, and people are outside the lecture hall, and so they're easily distracted telling stories, and you don't even know what is happening in the front. So this kind of learning environment will not help our students to acquire the knowledge. At the end of the day, it's just like attending class to just pass because it's a requirement to graduate for graduation and all that. And these are some of the things that induces students at the lower level to think of unhealthy, unacceptable way of passing exams. And they have credits therefore that they cannot defend by their use of the language. Then we have disruption of school sectional calendar by industrial dispute between employers and employees. This kills impetus for teaching and learning. It will actually destroy their passion for learning, and they turn elsewhere to look for a better source of income, even though they've made up their mind to be in the teaching profession. And then there's failure of teaching and learning. At times, teachers will not do their work because of lack of supervision. This will not be known. And at times, two students fail for whatever reason to do their part. And if there's no supervision, this kind of failure can contribute. Then number 9, negative impact of exam malpractice. Some feel that if I can get to a place, if I can get to the required credit, or at the level of the university, first year at the university, if I can get a pass, the essence is not getting a pass. For example, the English for academic purpose at the university level has these two purposes. One, to remedy their fault, their weaknesses, or whatever problem they have in the language as they enter the university. That is one. So it's remedial in trust and also developmental in trust. Then you take them beyond that level to sophisticate their use of the language so that they can essentially cope with learning in the advanced courses in the medium of English language. But this issue of exam malpractice, this cutting corners, thinking of getting what they are not supposed to have by dubious means. And then you see that is enough distraction. That is not the focus of English for academic purposes. That is not the focus for English for general English taught at lower level. The essence is for them to know how to use the language. That's why we're always having this embarrassing situation. They are passed through the system. They are not able to get a basic ground in the language to be able to speak, to communicate acceptably. And at the end of the day, wherever they go and use the language, it is an index to the kind of quality of education we have in our country, particularly in Nigeria, or in places where English is used as second language. Number 10, we're having sufficient duration and post-supervision of English language teaching practice. What is the duration for teaching practice? Maybe a few weeks. And then the let go. What is the supervision? What are the kind of people supervising it? Are they all experts in that area? Or as many that are found in the department are assigned their work to do? Then we have replacement of reading, for example, storybooks with watching movies. Storybooks, like I've earlier mentioned, help our students, learners to be able to use the language well. Listening to good broadcasts or good speakers of English language, reading storybooks, and all this help them to acquire the language. At times, intuitively, there are certain expressions they will use because of this exposure. That's one thing with language. You may acquire it without formally being in a classroom because you are used to hearing it or even reading it. You may not be taught it, but then you'll be able to use it because you're reading it. And now you're hearing people speaking it. But when these days, home movies, videos have taken over reading, it also contributes to their eventual weak base in the language. I want to look at the recommendations so that I can end what is appearing to the longer presentation. Essentially, when we find all the inhibitions, all the problems I've mentioned, then we will be able to have good users of the language when they leave the schooling system. But basically, I'll just mention four. Number one, provision of English language teaching materials, availability of adequate English language learning facilities, and the employment of qualified and not just qualified, but enough English language teachers. And then, of course, implementation of English language teachers incentive, in addition to paying their monthly salary. My conclusion is that learners of English language in a second language context, as in Nigeria and other countries, can speak and write standard English as educated native speakers if qualified teachers are engaged, if teaching materials are made available, and learning facilities are provided. After all, we have these European missionaries, social intellectuals who visited these African countries. They learned, spoke, and wrote African languages well. And today, for example, some of these holy books like the Bible, until recently, most of the copies we have in our indigenous language were written by European missionaries. If they non-native speakers of indigenous African languages or Nigerian language, for example, who come here, stay with us, learn our language, speak it, and write it so well as to give us the holy book in our own language, I think it is a fact that Nigerian or learners of English language in the second context can also speak the standard English language as obtained in native speakers contest, or as spoken by educated non-native speakers. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate your sharing the wealth of knowledge with us. And because of our time, we quickly go to the question and answer, the interactive session. So please, if you have a question to ask, please use the feature of raising the hand so that we can know. I am aware some questions are already in the chat, So while I wait for people to signify if they have questions, I'll read out some of the questions from the chat. So please, let's be quite fast about it. So please, if you have any question, please indicate with the raise of the hand feature. I'm trying to navigate to reading out the questions that have already been raised. Oh yes, Adela Adenola, I can see your hands. Please unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you, sir. Are you still there?
I am here.
Okay, you're welcome, sir. Please ask your question.
Oh no, I thought you are referring to the presenter. Sorry.
Oh no, sir. I'm referring to Adela. I think he left. Okay, so let me get back to the questions that were sent on the chat. So please, if you still have a question, please use the raise of the hand feature so that we know, so the presenter can answer your question. And if you think you will not want to say it verbally, you can also send it in through the chat. Got it. What's the law? Okay. So, Ms. Adeleye Adenola, please unmute yourself and ask your questions. Please, if you raised a question on the chat earlier, there was a network issue from our end, so the chat got cleared. So I'm trying to navigate and I can't find them. We are so sorry for that. So please, you can raise the questions again or just ask them verbally. Mr. Adeleye Adenola, please ask your question. You will have to unmute yourself, please. Yes, please go ahead and ask your question. We can't hear you. Okay, while we wait for him, I can see another hand raised. Techno. The name is not displayed. It's the device name I can see, but I'm sure you know. Your hand is raised. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
All right, this is Mr. Sule from Deeper Life High School, Benin campus. Can
You're
you hear me,
welcome,
ma'am?
sir. Yes, I can.
Can you hear me? All right.
Yes, I can hear you.
I want
Go
to
ahead.
appreciate the doctor. I want to appreciate the doctor for the lecture. I really learned one or two things, but I have a question to ask. The question is this: how do you deal with mother tongue intrusion in the aspect of the learners? Mother tongue intrusion. Have that case as a kind of a problem where students who wants to pronounce words, or due to the fact that they have a particular language as their L1, and it's kind of intruding into the English language. How do you deal with such a situation? Thank you.
It's okay.
Did you hear my question? Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking it. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
You see, the English language has its own sound system and how these sounds are pronounced to convey appropriate meaning. And if you look at other English teaching scheme or learning scheme at the level of the secondary school, they expose the students are supposed to the sound, the correct sound, and then they have to stop their own native sounds for people. And if you look at, there's one principle called minimal pair. When you contrast sound, you bring two sounds together. Sound in BI and the sound in BEAT, they are different. That kind of contrast will help the child. And then you can specifically note the challenge that the child has. If it's, for example, pronouncing, let me give you the example. For soldier, you write choja. Soldier, you pronounce choja. Or for brother, you pronounce brother. Now, you know his problem has to do with that consonant sound. And so you have to drill him particularly on that. And that's why if you use this minimal pair approach, contrastive approach, you bring sounds that it enables to bring sounds that are wrongly pronounced by natives together. Sounds that they don't even distinguish in their pronunciation. And when you go to the consonant sound for the case of brother and brother, you will see that the difference between the two sounds and L. So you have to give them words that will enable them practice the distinction. In that way, they'll come out of it. It has to do with teaching and practice. You reveal it to them, and then they keep on practicing it. And that boils down to what I earlier said, creativity of the teacher to handle every learner's deficiency so that they can speak the language well. Thank you. I'm done. Hello?
All right, thank you, sir. Yes, I know. Thank you so much, sir. I don't know if the person is satisfied with that.
Okay, yes.
Are you still there, sir? Mr. Sule from DLHS. Oh, okay. I guess we. Okay, before I take the next question, let me just read one of the questions on the chat. Earlier, so while you were still taking the lecture, someone did mention that there are instances where we have English graduates, but they don't speak well. That was when you emphasized that people that should teach the language should be people who really studied it, not people who did things related to the language. So someone did mention that there are instances where we have English language graduates, or even from their speech, from the way they pronounce words, they are not the best. So how do we address such issue?
It's simple. You don't engage somebody in teaching. He's going to groom others. He should be a model. If he's not a model, there are other places he can work. He mustn't teach. This is some of the problem we have. I must teach because I have that certificate, even though I can't do it, even though I'm not a model. And they have to engage me, maybe because I know one or two person, or because I desperately need a job. No. Is it not possible? That's why during, the system allows for interviewing job seekers. Yes, he has a certificate, but he's not a model user or speaker of the language. You don't engage such a person. There are other things the person can do. And that is the problem we have in our system. That we have this 6334 is based on this Aristotelian wisdom that by the time the child gets to GSS3 and he cannot cope with abstract learning, he should withdraw to do maybe plumbing, which he has been introduced to during intro technology class. So those who are capable of abstract learning should go ahead. He calls them philosopher kings. And that is the same thing. Somebody cannot cope. You are pushing the child to go to SS1. And that kind of pushing continues. He goes to the university, reads English, and come back, he cannot perform. Meanwhile, he has expressed his skill earlier we're doing introductory technology that is better in carpentry. And the system says, let that point be terminal point for the child and let him go out and learn that carpentry. You don't push him to go ahead. But of course, that happens. And if he comes for a job, you don't give him that job. Hello, I'm done.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I think just to buttress that, I don't know if this can also come as a question. There are people who are really gifted. They didn't study English, but they speak well. So how do we place people like that in the teaching? They didn't study English language, but they have a full grasp of how the language should be taught. They speak well, they can write well, they have the grammar, everything intact. So how do we place people like that? I think I'm just asking for someone. I don't know.
That speaking fluent in speech, having that charisma and so on, does not translate as knowledge of the English language. Now, like now in this country, in the most of the second language contests, where English is studied, the correct pronunciation are not even done. Like when I was being taught, I was told that if you are meeting with certain persons, you go learn it. You code switch. There's an allowance for code switching. You get to the market, you use the pidgin English, and you get to the classroom, be a model. But if you are speaking to other people who are not in that area, in order to maintain their friendship, you use the normal one. Like if I come to your place and I keep on using the word bucket for bucket, you will try to avoid me and say that I want to show that I speak English language. For come and all that, I'll likely lose my friends. But in the classroom, I should be a model. The fact that somebody can speak very well like that doesn't qualify him to teach English language. What did you know about English? The contents of the language. The other day, somebody was being interviewed, Yoruba, an Igbo man. In fact, I applauded the way he was speaking Yoruba language. He may not have gone to the classroom to learn Yoruba language. And so we were drafted to go and teach Yoruba language because he's fluent in it. Maybe he read physics. No, it's not correct. So being fluent in the language is different from knowing it and communicating the facts that will help the children to use it effectively and acceptably in communication. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, sir. So strictly stay with your calling. If you study English, then teach the English. I think I picked that. Joseph Babalola, please unmute yourself and ask your question. I'm sorry with the title. Apparently the titles are not displaced, so I can't really pick the titles. Just forgive me. Joseph Babalola, please go ahead with your question.
Can you hear me over there?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
I want to appreciate the speaker for the job well done. In the course of the presentation, he made mention of 6 components of language teaching in secondary school. I want him to list this and how do we distribute the items across the timetable in the secondary school, especially for a balanced linguistic pedagogy. Personally, I can only identify 5 major, but now when he talk about 6, I want to know that. I know about the speech, the comprehension, the grammar, mechanics, and essay. That's how we distribute the thing all across. So, but for the 6 items, I want to know it, and maybe you can help us to distribute it along the timetable that is available, especially in the secondary school system. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. But you didn't introduce yourself.
I'm Joseph Dr. Joseph Olurotimi Babalola.
Okay, thank you, sir. I wanted to get the title. Thank you.
Okay, the areas are, of course, we have grammatical structures or lenses. You can use, normally you
Which internet?
I can't hear again.
Yeah, it's the internet. It's the same issue here.
Okay.
Let's just be a bit patient. Probably from his hand or our hand.
Okay.
lesson period for grammatical and what is in the text to give them fact that for you who have the student in mind, because you know that surprisingly in some secondary school the students don't have notebooks. They have notes on CRS in biology, but they don't have a good note on English language. So by the time you now say you give double lesson period for grammatical structures, I are giving them certain basic facts about the language, not limiting yourself to the structure, to the lesson in the class text. You see, they will have a lot of information about the language that will help them speak well. When I taught in the secondary school, I had a student who was going, surprisingly, the notes I gave him, he compiled them. There were about 3 exercise books which he bound together. I had to request that he should give it to me. Because I need to go through it again and see, because some of my notes were missing. And so we were busy reading their notebooks. And then to help that, they read other notebooks, they read their own notebook for the exam. And that year, the student did well. So you have a double lesson period for grammatical structure, 1 for oral skills, then you have writing, and then you have another day for vocabulary development. You have another day for vocabulary development. Particularly, you must have double lesson period, and then the other aspects. I think there are supposed to be 5. A day for vocabulary development, a lesson for oral skills, then writing, and then 2 double lesson periods for grammatical structures. So it depends on how you classify them, but just you can, if you have 6, then you are limited to, I have 5, I have 6, then you have 2 for 1 day, and then the other 4 between the 4 days of the week.
All right. Thank you, sir, for that. I go back to the chat, the questions on the chat before I go back to people asking verbally. There is a question here from Akinpelu Akindoyin. I guess the question might not be addressed now, but I'm going to, what can be done to actually fight the negative effects of exam malpractice in Nigeria? Maybe we'll talk a bit on it, but I guess it was not in that particular seminar when we dealt basically on exam malpractice. I guess you can request for the seminar, follow back on that. But the speaker that they spoke extensively on hardware device, considering the fact that we're in the virtual era where people are learning virtually, and if with time we might have assessments done virtually. So he was talking about JAMA. A lot of things got discussed that day on exam. So I guess today we want to focus on English. But if you like to know more, we can send you that particular seminar details on that. I go to the other question here on English.
Let me add something.
Okay,
Hello?
sir. Yes, I go ahead, sir.
He will have to refer to that matter, but let me just give us what happened somewhere. In a school in Port Harcourt, someone who taught there, he's now in Ibadan trying to finish his PhD, his son-in-law. He told me that the teacher, somebody came around, whether an examiner or external examiner or supervisor, and was attempting to help the students. When the students discovered that, they laughed him to scorn. They were surprised, and they were telling the teacher that you don't do that here. And what I learned from that is that the student would have been thoroughly taught, 1, so they didn't find that difficult. 2, they have a very good orientation. And I think that's what we need in this country. All of us have to contribute, parents, teachers, students, the government, everybody. If we have the right orientation, and then we do what we're supposed to do, why would the child want to leave a particular place for another? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. So that's the physical and the emotional aspect to ensuring we control that. I have a question here. How can the issue of shortage of qualified English language teachers be tackled in our secondary schools in Nigeria? That's from Olujimi Odeni.
That is really a problem. 1, we need to go back to the teaching learning process. Look at our English language education program, teacher education program. reorganize it properly, and then when they leave the system, and when we leave the system, we should have enough people to handle our students. But of course, you know, when some of them come, it depends on their mind, on their orientation. They will just take the degree, but they're not interested in teaching. There are other better things they want to do. Get to the banking job, he has a better offer. So it is a whole lot of, it's a major problem. We have to solve it from various angles. How much you pay the teacher? In the country I learned, in Finland I learned, everybody aspires to be a teacher. Because I think that place has about the best educational system in the world. In that place, about 15 students per class. But they said many people aspire to be teachers because they are well paid. And most of our people who read English and know that leaving the profession maybe to other places where the job is. The banking industry, maybe the military and other places where it pays better to earn a living, to work and earn a living. So that is a major problem. And I think the major thing is that if you can pay teachers well, who will be attracted? Somebody who has read teacher and he knows that he's going to get about, on graduating, gets about 200,000, why would he not want to come to the field to work? But when they are paid very small amount of money and that is not even regular and all that, and again, the people who have the qualification are not employed and all that, the schools are lacking. So you see, it's a kind of monster. I have to attack it from various ends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure our voices will get to the appropriate quarters one day. I would have the next person. I guess this will be the last vocal question we'll have because of our time. Let's have Adeleye Adenola. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce the name well. Adeleye Adenola. Please ask your question. Are you there? Okay, while I wait for her, let me just read the next question here. English is such a broad subject in the university. We are supposed to specialize, but in the classroom, we have to handle all aspects. This is one major problem. What can be done about this? That's from Grace Yinusa.
The proper exposure to English language. Proper exposure to English language will help. Because in the university, you learn the language itself, where you have been trained. And then, of course, literature, which serves as a kind of use of English language, a demonstration of the use of English language. But if you look at the core area of English language, let's say, for example, at the university level, you have grammar, you have semantics, you have syntax, you have morphology, you have phonology. These are the core areas. But when you come to the secondary school, these core areas are reflected. They just bear different names. What we call grammar becomes structure. What we are calling semantics and morphology, they become lexis, or some people call it vocabulary development. And what you call phonology becomes oral English. So as you get to that place, you learn all these aspects. And when you come to the lower level of the secondary school, they have you reflected in the school names. So you cannot at the training we have in Nigeria, it's not how you only grammar. They are first of all even at the master's level, we are still exposed to all these areas.
Hello?
Yeah, it's the network issue. Let's just be patient.
Hello?
Hello?
Sir.
Hello? This is Mr. Adele.
Oh, okay.
Hello?
Just hold on a bit. Hold on a bit. He's attending to your question. Just hold on. When he's done, you go ahead with your question, please.
Okay.
Sir, please go ahead, sir.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Please go ahead.
What I'm just saying that at the level at the university level or college of education, the training covers the basic aspects of the language, like grammar, syntax, semantics, morphology, and phonology. These are the 5 core areas. You study all these areas, and by the time you get to the secondary school and to teach, these areas are still there, but at the lower elementary level. For example, grammar becomes structure, or they call it grammatical structures. And then what we are calling, that's grammar and syntax are compressed as grammatical structures. Because syntax has to do with study of sentence structure. They are compressed together as grammatical structures. And what we are calling morphology, which is the study of word structure, and also semantics, which is the study of formal meaning of words and sentences. Now, these 2 are compressed as lexis, more vocabulary. Then we now have what we call phonology as oral English. So at the university level, you are exposed to all these areas. Even if a college of education, you are exposed to these areas. Even when you go for master's degree, you are still further exposed to these areas. You only talk about specialization when so you are a specialist in all these areas. It's just that your thesis may be just in one area that you feel inclined to. So that is the nature of the program here in the country and in other places too. It doesn't allow you to just pick only one aspect, grammar, and then you don't know the other areas and specialize. No. So if you are either graduating with high interest in English language or interest in literature. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So let's have this last vocal question because of our time. Adeleye, Adenola. Please go ahead with your question, please.
Good evening. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can.
Good evening. I want to ask, in the course of recruiting teacher that will take English language, many times you discover that those that read the literature, they are even better than those that read English. What do you do in this? That in selection. You go ahead to take the one that read English or the one that read literature.
What do you mean by better?
Thank you so much.
Hello?
Hello? Is it better in terms of speech? Hello?
In most cases, some of them that read literature, they are even better than the one that read the English. And you want to employ English teachers. What do you go ahead to take the one that read the English and leave the one that read the literature?
Can you qualify the better?
Hello?
By better.
You see, I'm not an English teacher, but when we put people on ground to test them, to do the interview, and then the results show that the one that read literature is better to take the English. But with what you have said now, should we go ahead to take the one that read the English and not the one that read literature? Yeah, what I'm saying, the outcome of the interview showed that the one that read the English, I mean, the literature is good. When you look at those, some of them that read the English, and we want to employ the one that will teach English language. So what do we do in that case?
Okay, I'm not really making a case for graduates of English language. But the question, there are some questions I need to ask. For example, what is the question of the test? How protestant did it cover? If you are testing somebody to teach your student on English language, what to do is even to pick the English language past questions and subject the teachers to it. Let him answer the objective from WAEC. Let him answer the comprehension questions. Let him answer the oral English. When I was to teach in secondary school in Kano, after leaving the university, they subjected me to such things. Then you'll be able to know. And then it depends on the kind of question you ask the person. Is it because he's fluent in answering your questions? Or because you confronted him with a past question from WAEC or NECO, and he was better in it than the graduate of English? I'm not really making a case for English graduates that they are all good. That's not what I'm saying. But it depends on the kind of test you have. I mean, the questions you put forward to the applicants. But I think one of the good approaches is to go back. Somebody coming to teach in secondary school, go back, you pass by a question paper, and they ask the person to answer. After it takes about 2 hours, 30 minutes to answer the question one. I mean, the paper one. That has composition and compression and summary, and give him another. The other one, the less. I mean, the objective is just about 1 hour. Let him answer, and then the other English. The Y gives about, I think, 1 hour or so, or 60 minutes to answer the questions. So you subjecting to all these three questions coming from the Y, for example, or NECO, which your students are going to be prepared to take and see how the person performs. And not just asking questions within few minutes and then the person proves to be intelligent in answering the questions and then you admit the person. I had an interview. Somebody was brought from the ministry to interview me. I needed a government job at that time. I was in a missionary school. And the university came. He asked me to give him the sounds of English language. And I know there are long sounds and short sounds. When I began to produce the long and short, he was surprised. He was even giving the impression that I didn't know what I was doing. So what I did to be able to skate through the interview and get the job, which I dearly needed at that time, was to give him the unique sounds. I will not say "oh," I'll say "e," and say "oo." I started applauding me. I know something. But when I told him "oh," which is short and long, he was saying he was just embarrassed, giving the impression that I don't know what I was talking about. So it depends on the kind of people that are interviewing the students, the kind of questions they give to the students, and all that. But that doesn't mean you must employ a graduate of English who cannot perform if you give him the appropriate test. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Because of time, I'm going to read about 4 questions together. About 2 of them are kind of related, so that we can just skim through all the other questions. Someone here is asking the role of mentoring and team teaching in ensuring that the graduates who are not coping well in teaching the subjects to avoid wrong knowledge transfer. So what's the role of mentoring and team teaching to ensure people who cannot really handle the subjects well, so that we don't transfer that wrong knowledge to the students? Then the next question, is it bad for a teacher to use a native language in class to explain a concept which is our students find difficult to understand in English? I think I'm so interested in this too. So you just answered my question with this word. Having the charisma in speaking the English language does not translate into not, okay, this is not the question. The next one says, is it compulsory that a teacher of English language should speak like a native speaker before it can be considered a good English language speaker? So let me just read out the cluster again. What's the role of mentoring and team teaching in ensuring that...
Can you help me after the first one? Just quickly take it. I won't take time.
Okay, sir. What is the role of mentoring and team teaching in ensuring that the graduates who are not coping well in teaching the subject avoid wrong knowledge transfer?
Yes, they are very helpful. Because I remember in my presentation, I talk about knowledge updating programs, like maybe workshops and so on. It is a very good idea. You get to the system, you don't even know, some of them don't even know how to prepare a lesson, and you have to be guided. I've ever worked in a school where I think a teacher had to be marking, it was his function, duty to mark our lesson plans. Where we went wrong, he corrected us. So it's a very good approach. It will help them to do the right thing and bring up the children well. And some are humble enough to even tell you, this I don't know, and you put them through. The next question. So
right.
it is
it bad for a teacher? Okay, sir. Is it bad for a teacher to use the native language to explain in class when it's difficult for the students to understand in English?
Yes, see, that is the entering behavior problem now. They enter the class not sufficiently prepared to learn at that level. They don't have the basic language competence to cope with learning at that level. So ordinarily it shouldn't be, because it should be able to use they should be able to understand the students should understand the teacher. But if all efforts are getting them to understand fail, then it's not wrong if he uses that. But except if all the students are from that particular language, but actually at that level, they should be able to understand. But because of this weak background, it's not wrong, but that's
All right.
not ideal, not recommendable. But since they are weak, what do you do?
Okay. It's not ideal, but it's not wrong. Thank you, sir. So the question here is it compulsory that a teacher of English language should speak like a native speaker before he can be considered as a good English language teacher?
Yeah, well, see, when we talk about native speakers, there are educated native speakers. Even if you get to London, for example, the English we are learning here is the same thing that their children will learn in school. You only have advantage of having acquired it intuitively rather, from their parents. But they will not even be able to write whatever they speak. But they have to go to a formal classroom to be able to know that what way they pronounce the word, a particular word. They will now know the spelling and all that. So what they are speaking and what we are learning here is the same. They call it accepted received pronunciation. That is the educated English language that we're also learning. Although we may have the Nigerian English now, like kind of local coloration, because we understand ourselves. For example, if you can go to an office and say, where is your Oga? Oga is understood by us, and it's not in the office. It's not in the office, or maybe it's not on seat. It's understood by us. You come to someone's house and say we're on the table because you meet him taking his dinner. You understand it, but that is the local coloration. But we are talking about standard English. It's the same thing we obtain here, and I will teach here, we learn here, that they also learn over there. But if you go to other native speakers among them, they may not be even speaking their standard English. They may not even pronounce it very well. So when you are talking about speaking like that, except you are talking about intonation. But if you learn the standard English and you're able to communicate well, I think that is just all. You must not speak with their own intonation and all that because what we are even learning is not quite holistic to the point of speaking like them. Like you see Ghanaians now, there's this sound we call air sound. They have it in their language, the sure voice. It's very common for them to use that air, like we say teachers, and it's supposed to be teachers. That air sound is common in their language, and they will have no problem using it. But here, we have to learn that it's not teachers, but teachers. And then when you're in the classroom, you have to use teachers. But you come outside the classroom, and you want to interact with friends, and keep on using, that sound, it's like you eventually not have friends. That's why this principle code switching very relevant in the second language context. You code switch to be understood. You get to the class, you appear a model. So there's no anything the native speakers feel particularly that we have to copy, except the intonation and all that. But as for the sound, if you get there, they say come. We say come here. If you get there, they say bucket. We say bucket here. Also, we could switch and say at times say bucket. So you're already speaking like them. Instead of talking about the intonations and all that, and the way they speak very fast. So to get to that environment, if you get there, you learn like them and speak like them as well. But whatever you speak there, as soon as you get to that environment, you can be understood. That's why we're speaking mutually acceptable English language. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So it seems that speaking well, it's a collective effort, not just the teachers in the classrooms, even the parents, they have a huge role to play in making sure that everyone speak well. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Adaje. We are so glad you accepted to facilitate tonight, and I'm sure everyone has learned one or two things.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, this might be I'm just seeing some questions coming in, but our time is really fast spent. So you can get back to us on email. We might be able to answer other questions. So sorry about that. To my participants, I'm so glad tonight we have a lot of people joining us for the very first time. And this is like a very, very encouraging event. We have a very large crowd tonight, and I'm sure every one of us joining for the first time you've seen reasons to stay with us. We are glad you are here, and I'm sure the more you come, the more you learn. So please, next week is another time with us, same time, and weekly we roll out the link to join the seminar. I've seen a lot of people here requesting for the seminar resources, especially that one on I think examination malpractice. Yes, I think I've seen a number of people requesting for that. I'll get back to you on how, because usually what we do is we get our resources across to our registered member. But for tonight, we're going to have everyone have tonight's resource material, both the slides, the video. I think those are basically the resource material for tonight. So it will be sent to your email in an hour's time. Check your email. In 1 hour's time, you'll get the video and the slide for tonight's seminar. Thanks to our facilitator, he's so generous to have us all have it. So in an hour's time, just check your email. You have the slide and then the video. For those of us that want to join our Telegram group and our WhatsApp groups, the link to the WhatsApp groups, just one, the link to the WhatsApp group and the Telegram group will also be attached to the email that will be sent to you. So you can click on those links to join us, so you can get other information you need to know about the association. Thank you so much once again, our facilitator. A lot of people are saying thank you, and I'm joining them to say thank you. And I'm sorry for those.
And I'll be glad if I have the video too, and I already have the slides.
Okay, so I will forward it to you as well. Thank you so much. We are so glad. All right, so for the other participants, once again, this is IAIEA, and we come here every Saturday, 8 p.m. for the weekly seminar. As I said before we started the lecture, that the annual conference will be coming up this year, November, virtually on Zoom. So we'll be having, other details will be sent to you. You can also mail us at info@iaiea.org. Other information that will be needed. The fee for the conference this year is $20. That's 5,000 naira. And you can also register. Please ensure to register so that subsequently you can get the resource, the materials that we use for the weekly seminar sent to you. So basically, we say, as I said earlier, we send it to just the registered members, but for this week, we'll be sending it to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Peace. Till next week, remain blessed.
Thank you. Okay, wow. Well, I shall attend the lab.